Hi, this is Tasty Good. Today we're talking wine and a connoisseur of wine, Ryan Sharp, co-owner of Enzo Winery.
That's right. I don't know about a connoisseur though. I just like wine.
Oh, so do we consider this craft wine?
Oh yeah. I mean, everything here is super hands-on, very small batch. Everything gets a lot of attention. Even our bottles are like hand stamped, hand labeled. So yeah, I'd call it craft wine.
Something I haven't really explored. I have craft beer, I have craft spirits, but I've never had craft wine. How does it differ from larger producers?
Sure. Well, I mean, multiple sort of stops along the way are different. So first of all, we hand pick our grapes instead of machine picking, which a lot of the bigger brands do. We're very hands-on with our production process. So we ferment in these very small bins versus these gigantic tanks. And then we hand bottle, we hand label. We don't tend to filter our wines, which is another thing that sort of makes it crafty. You're really leaving the soul of the wine still in there. At the end of the day, you like what you like. So, whether it's craft or not, but I do think that with craft wines, you do get something a little bit more unique than you would get with larger wineries.
How many barrels do you have? I mean, we're in your room. Is this it?
This is it, yeah. So I don't know, there's probably 50 barrels here. Probably only half of them are full. So we sort of the inventory shifts with the year because the difference between brewing beer and making wine is that you can brew beer year round. You could keep your barrels full year round, but wine you only get to make once a year. Harvest is in fall, and then you sort of move stuff into barrel and then bottle as needed for us.
Interesting. It's fascinating. What got you into it?
So I was a touring musician for years, and when we finally landed, we landed in San Francisco. And while I was there, I took up home brewing, which I really enjoyed doing. Beer, exactly, home brewing beer, which I really enjoyed that process. And living in San Francisco, of course, you have such amazing access to Napa, Sonoma, but where I really loved was the Sierra foothills, and we'd go and visit wineries there. And I realized that a lot of the winemakers out there, it was their third or fourth career. These weren't people who were born into wine. So I really started to get into this idea of when I retired, whatever age that would be, that I would buy a small plot of land in the Sierra foothills of California and start my own winery and vineyard. But then we moved to Portland, and I thought
that's a good thing.
That's great, yeah. and thought why not start it here and now? So
it is wine country.
It is wine country.
Were you thinking that when you came here?
No. No, I really didn't know much about the Oregon wine scene until I got here. Really, I mean, Californians.
This is 10 years ago.
That's about 15 years ago that we moved here, but about 11 years ago that I started Enzo.
So when you got here, you didn't know anything about wine in Oregon. Was Oregon still blossoming as a wine country then, or were they? I'm not sure what the history of.
Yeah, I mean, so the Oregon wine scene has been around for 40, 50 years now. But living in California, California is very myopic as far as wine choices. It's California, California, California. I had no idea that Oregon was a serious wine producer. I had heard that Washington had some good Syrahs and Cabs, but I really came to Oregon not realizing that it actually was a fantastic place to grow grapes and make wine. So I had already started wine training when I lived in California, but I didn't really know that it would be happening in Oregon for me to start a place like this.
And what about craft wineries? Were you one of the first?
I was one of the first. I certainly was not the first. In fact, some of the very early ones are no longer here. I think the oldest remaining urban winery in Portland is Hip Chicks Do Wine. So we sort of came in probably as number 2 or 3. And then, within 5 years of that, there was a dozen of us producing wine. I think there's now probably a couple dozen producers in the city of Portland making wine in the city.
Do you have your own vineyard, your own plot of land?
We have vineyards that we work with pretty regularly, but I don't own any lands, no. And that was, so when I got here, I began working for a winery and vineyard in the Willamette Valley. And I got to be hands-on with both the vineyard work and the winery work. And I realized that they're two very different jobs. Making wine is, it's chemistry, and then it's marketing and sales. Growing grapes is farming. and I'm a horrible farmer. So I like the idea that I have grape growers that I trust. They'll grow the grapes to the specifications I give them, and then I'll go happily collect them and pay them for it, bring them back here, and then I'll produce the wine and market it and sell it. Well, the Enzo specialty is certainly our rosé. That's the thing where like we really excel. We convert red wine drinkers, white wine drinkers, beer drinkers with our rosé. It's so delicious.
I never gravitated to rosé.
Yeah, I mean it's.
I always thought of it was Pinot Noirs here and then rosés down here, but I'm not knowledgeable. I'm just your weekend wine warrior.
So a red wine is almost always going to have more complexity than something that's chilled, and part of that is because a red wine gets to have full access to the juice, the skins, the seeds, sometimes even the stems, and so you can pull flavors from all of those. That happens when a red wine ferments, but a white wine or a rosé, you're mainly fermenting juice. So you lose all of that skin, flavor, and aromas. We make some really delicious red wines. I don't tend toward Pinot Noir. And part of that is because I'm not a huge Pinot Noir fan, but the other part was that, I know.
What?
I can't say that in Oregon. But that's the thing, Oregon is so saturated with Pinot Noir. Who's going to make the next great Pinot Noir? So I've made some Pinot Noir along the way.
So when you say you're not a big fan of Pinot Noir, as a winemaker or as a wine taster?
As
both?
just as a consumer, it's not like that's not my region. That's not. I tend to. So Pinot Noir comes from Burgundy, which is sort of like northeast France, and I tend to prefer the wines that are further south. They're closer to the Mediterranean. So red wines like Mourvedre, Grenache, Cinsault, Counoise, Petit Syrah, those are really my jam.
I like a Petit Syrah.
Yeah.
Do you make them?
We do, yeah. We're actually releasing one next month. I'm really excited about that.
I will buy one.
Yeah.
What's the key to having good wine produced? What do you always look for? And do you ever have any bad batches that you get a toss?
Okay. So
Twofold question.
to answer the last question first, yes, I have had to dump wine. I've had to have
That's
wine.
gotta hurt.
It does, but when it's bad, it's bad. I've had to get wine distilled. I had 5 barrels that really turned on me, and I took them to a distillery here in town, and they distilled it, and they kept half and gave me back half. So I've actually got some brandy sitting in the back here. I'm not legally allowed to sell it because I'm not a distiller, but I'll maybe taste it and give it to friends or something. So
How good is the brandy?
I haven't checked in on it in probably like 9 months.
Well, why don't we try it? Come on, we'll do a little experimental taste. This is Tasty Good PDX.
It is.
Come on, let's give it a shot. We'll have your wine.
All right.
And a little taste of your brandy.
Let me think it through, but I think we can do this. I think it could be a good time
to see what it tastes like.
I think today could be the day to taste it. But like controlling the process, having wines go bad, it does happen. I mean, so this is part of, when you use the word craft. So when you're a large winery, you're producing millions of bottles a year, you have everything dialed in with computer systems so that nothing ever goes bad. Well, when you make wine in a super natural way like I do, that is a very natural way, you're not adding all these additives, you're not adding all these preservatives, and so because you're taking that sort of low-level intervention, sometimes barrels do go sideways. And so with that, there's options to treat them or filter them, and we have done that a few times, like where we're like, this is so close to great, like let's just polish it up, but generally we try not to futz around with our wines too much once they're in barrel. Let them be what they are.
Last question, is it profitable? I mean, do you do this for a living?
I do this for a living, yes. This has been my sole job for the last 8 years, and we've been open for 10. Yes, it's profitable. Of course, it's a strange time to ask a question because last year, was definitely not a profitable year. So all of our wines are only available here. You can't go to Fred Meyer. You can't go to other states. We used to have our wines in 5 states, and we decided to stop doing that about 5 years ago. So when the lockdown happened, you had to come here to get the wines, and so most people.
Because there was an uptick in wine sales, but people were ordering them from big stores and bringing them home.
A lot of people were getting them through grocery stores, which is fine and good. I mean, that's a very natural place to buy wine in Oregon, but mainly people come here to taste our wines, to experience the place. Of course, people take bottles to go, but we're mainly an on-premise location.
And wine tasting place.
Exactly, a wine tasting place.
So it's sociable as well as being educated and trying a very unique,
exactly
exclusive wine of Oregon.
Yeah, and we have some weird wines. We've got like, we have a Counoise, which almost nobody's ever tried before. We do make a Pinot Noir, although it's 75% Pinot Noir and 25% Chardonnay, which is based on how they made red Burgundies 400 to 500 years ago. So we make all these unusual wines, so this is a really great place to come and taste wines that you probably wouldn't taste. I mean, we also make like a really delicious Cabernet Sauvignon. You know, there's crowd pleasers, but we make a lot of wines that are kind of like, what is this? You know, what is in my glass?
What kind of price points?
30s to 40s.
Not bad.
Yeah.
I'm in that range.
Yeah.
That'd be my high end. I'm not
Sure,
a.
yeah.
I mean, some people won't buy anything less than a $200 bottle. You know, there's
I don't know
wine
those
snobs.
I know none
Do
of
you
those
need
people.
to? Do you need to spend good money? Do you need to be up in that upper echelon to get the really fine wine, or can you get a great bottle at $30 and $40?
I mean, I think that there are incredible wines at those price points, but they're just not of interest to me. I've tried them, and I'm always grateful to try them. But you know, for me, when I tend to buy wines, you know, when I'm not drinking my own stuff, I tend to buy Southern French wines. France is great because France has farm subsidies for grapes, which means that when we're buying wine from a French producer, we're actually getting it on discount. So like, if you're gonna buy an American bottle, I say never go under $20 for a bottle of American wine, because most likely—
I never do.
Because most likely it's gonna have additives or
Yeah.
preservatives or something
You
like
gotta
that.
pay some money to
gotta
get good
pay
wine in
something to get
America.
good wine. But in France, you can get a $20 bottle of wine in America from France, $20, and it'd be really solid.
Really?
Farm subsidies.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's a good
Yeah.
tip today on Tasty Good PDX. So let's do some tasting.
Yeah, let's do
That's
it.
what it's all about. Tasty Good PDX today. Craft wine with Ryan Chubb.